What's up, everyone? This is the Twice Over Film Club, and I'm your host, Faraz. Today we'll be previewing Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. This episode does not contain any spoilers. We're getting back to just doing any movie, and not just those that are recently released, but we will be continuing to sprinkle in recent releases as well as listener suggestions. So follow us at the Twice Over to see what we're watching and follow along. And also check out thetwiceover.com to see all the previous movies we've done and how we've scored them. Play around with the tally tool and change up the order of the elements and see how each movie fared and what the strengths were for each movie. Alright, on to this episode with myself, Farhan, and Yusuf.
Anyways, welcome everyone to the Twice Over. My name's Yusuf, and I'm here with two individuals who experience time at different rates than I do, apparently. Faraz and Farhan. Sorry for being late, guys.
No, I was late today, though.
Technically, but Yusuf preemptively...
Oh, but I was ready, but I just didn't.
I gave the heads up and delayed, but you know. That doesn't...
Yeah, but nothing new there, huh?
Nothing new. Nothing's changed.
All good,
We're all just moving through time-space. We're here today to discuss Interstellar, another Christopher Nolan movie, heavy on the sci-fi, 2014 flick that was, big budget, heavy on the acclaim, and it was kind of a culmination of everything Nolan, I feel like, right? That was kind of the point in his career where he had been quite established and all the expectations were in on him already going into that movie.
Hey, was this his first movie after Dark Knight Rises? So after the Batman?
So. Yeah, yep. Because he had The Dark Knight in 2008, then Inception in 2010,
in 2012,
Dark Knight Rises in 2012, and then this in 2014.
Yeah, let's talk about the acclaim. Did this what kind of acclaim we got here?
I mean, I think
awards.
Yeah, I think by the time it got to award season, maybe things had cooled down a little bit. It got several nominations, but they were all on the sound and editing side mostly, and I think that makes sense. There. Yeah, I think that makes sense for a movie like this, right? But he didn't get he didn't have the award season that one would expect, kind of with the
like direction or writing.
Yeah, exactly.
His boy Hans Zimmer did.
His boy Hans Zimmer.
He got nominated.
Indeed.
Nominated.
The one thing to note with Nolan movies, usually he's always been a big blockbuster summer release. Like he's never those late fall, which is like award season releases. So I don't think he's ever really been too concerned about appealing to the Academy Awards or anything. I mean,
well, yeah, he's been nominated for a couple of things, but I don't see any major wins. And it's really just Dunkirk and Inception. Really,
I think every single of his movies are like summer movies. I'm looking back at all the ones I've seen.
Oh, I'm talking about him winning.
No, I think that's right. He's been nominated for several things. He hasn't really won. Dunkirk was probably the movie that you could say fit the bill for going for the awards. And that one he was nominated for Best Director, I recall. But didn't win. But yeah, generally he's not really particularly concerned. The movies that are really gunning for it because they'll push the release back as far as possible, and that does help. There's a lot of gaming in the system. Yeah. I think we've discussed before how whether Oscar and Academy Awards generally are indicative of the quality of something, and I think it can be hit or miss, and I don't particularly look at it as like a blemish on his record. Not
agreed.
James Harden, who needs to win a title to back up any of his skill and his narrative, right? I think Christopher Nolan can walk away without ever having won Best Director, and I don't think that's going to be really a negative on him, although I'm sure he'd love to win one, right?
All right, so let's get into our scores for this now, right? Just rattle them off in our order. We'll start with narrative. I give it a 95.
I'm at a 90.
Ooh, 75 for me personally.
Okay, Farhan. What was generally lacking?
Yeah, I mean...
And to be fair, you have an above average score, actually, but you're just not as high as us.
Yeah. It's just not something that rates too highly. And this is kind of, we've talked about this with... I haven't done a Nolan movie with you guys, have I? No.
We did do Tenet.
We did Tenet, right. Outside of Tenet.
Yeah.
Outside of Dunkirk, what I've seen from Nolan in his big blockbuster movies, which is pretty much all the movies that he does, outside of the Batman ones, it's a really grand kind of story, but it's so interesting, and that's what is bringing me to the score. Otherwise, I don't think it really. To me, in terms of the direction, there was nothing spectacular. It was just average, but with a pretty good, with some interesting concepts, obviously, and an interesting narrative, interesting story. And so, yeah, that's why I gave it the score that I did.
Yeah, for me, I think I'm weighting within the narrative category the direction much heavier than the story itself. Like you said, it's a simple, good story, but I think it's grand and it's a big movie, and I just think Christopher Nolan's execution of that is pretty impressive because it's really, really well done, I thought.
I think that's right for me too. I mean, there's a lot that he hits well. To Farhan's point, the story's just very engaging, and that does a lot. But I think he balances that very well.
Well, let's go on to the writing score then. I gave this a 60.
Yeah, 70, 65, 70. I'll keep it at a 70.
Okay.
So I give this an 80, but I'm willing to be convinced otherwise, I think, because this is my second viewing, and I think I was already kind of seeing more holes in the writing than I did the first time around. So, I landed where I landed, but, I can probably see where you guys are going to be coming from already, but let's hear it.
So, yeah, like you said, it's... I guess the biggest thing is too much of it is exposition driven. It's just trying to tell us what is happening and how it's happening. Otherwise, it's all right, really. It's not like horrible, but that just brought it down to below average for me.
I mean, we all know, like, we're not watching this movie for its writing score. So, I mean, it's average, if not, it's just enough to just keep you in the seat. But the way you put that, Faraz, is so beautifully, it's exposition driven.
Yeah.
100%. Is that all they do is just explain. It's the question and answer thing like that. Just like I was talking about with Tenet. And so it's nothing spectacular, and it's not a focus. I know that for sure. So even the 60, I would totally see that happening too as a score.
So I think it's worth just noting that with a science fiction film, there is going to be some exposition. To me, that's not the worst thing, but you do have to keep an eye on it. And I think there are points where it definitely got away from him a little bit, especially with the movie so heavy in the science here. Nolan's big challenge is going to be working the science into the movie in a way that, the casual viewer, the average viewer can still understand and enjoy what's going on, even if they're not like the science buff. And you don't want to cheat things either, right? So I think he does that very well at certain points, but the secondary challenge that comes with that is just being able to not have the writing be just talking at somebody and in an unnatural way. So I do think certainly there are moments of dialogue where they're either just clumsy or far too literal. There's also moments in the movie where I feel like somebody asks a question that, based on what we know and what's established about their character, they should not be asking that question. Like there is no reason for them to ask that question out loud to someone else, but it's done just so that we can get the answer said out loud. So yeah, that's exposition at its worst, I think. And the writing does suffer in places due to that. Overall, though, I think I enjoyed it, and I think he did really do a very succinct job of laying out very complex concepts. And then he does his normal thing. There's various drops and dual meanings, which you'll get from multiple viewings, but those are, nice Easter eggs that are kind of built in there.
All right, so let's go on to the acting. Here I gave it a 75.
70.
I'm at 75 as well. So I think we have very little disagreement here. Who did you guys like and who didn't you like?
I thought Matthew McConaughey was great. I thought Michael Caine was good. I thought Jessica Chastain, Anne Hathaway also was great. Overall, it was very good. I think Eric from That 70s Show kind of brought it down a little.
Topher Grace, he got a moment in here, right?
Yeah, he wasn't bad, but whatever. It's a good score. So
Wait, where was he?
He was Murph's partner, I guess, at NASA.
He was like a doctor friend or something who ends up.
Yeah.
Maybe they have something on the side. I don't know.
Oh man.
I
remember that.
You're just willing a relationship into existence there. Good for you, man. Let's root for them.
Yeah, I think there was a pause when you asked who was great, and I think that's for a reason. I mean, I don't think anybody was great. I think everybody was average, and so again, I don't think it's their fault. Matthew McConaughey is an amazing actor. So is pretty much everyone else. Matt Damon is one of my favorite actors of all time.
Oh, true.
There's some great performers. I don't think that the parts were written well enough or deep enough for them. Again, it's nothing that we've talked about this in other Nolan films as well. So average performances throughout. I just wish that there was more depth written for some of these characters that could have brought this acting score up. But
yeah, so really it's the writing that's kind of bringing their acting down to like an average level instead of great.
Yep, I think I was gonna say that they're actually quite good performances. It's just that there's a lot of things that they were forced to do or things that they just weren't able to demonstrate on screen that brings it a little bit closer to average for me. It's pretty much just that. There's a few scenes where I'm like, dude, like I can just see that like they were like fed a line and it had to be that way. And maybe it didn't have to be that way. I can probably do some revising of this of this film and say, you should have done this scene a little bit differently and it would have come off a little bit more naturally. But that's really where the acting bothered me. It kind of in these scenes where I could tell that they were kind of forced into a situation that was a little bit unnatural. So I think they all were really good. And, to Nolan's credit, he chose a very good cast here. I think McConaughey did quite well. So, overall, I was happy with it, but yeah, it's probably not the standout thing here.
Okay, so let's move on to the themes. Here I gave it a 70.
70.
I'm at a 90 here, so I'm a little bit higher.
What was so impressive?
So without getting into the specific themes, I think there is kind of a singular, thematic thread throughout this movie where, and this is kind of a problem that I had with Tenet, where there isn't really a character focus in that movie, and here, I feel like there very much is. Even for a science fiction film, it all boils down to a specific, or a few, I could say, but really one specific relationship between characters, right? And that kind of drives the entire film. And they also kind of try to back end that into the science in a way, which I thought was kind of clever and a little bit more cohesive. It didn't just feel like, science versus emotion. They kind of melded those two concepts together in this movie. And in terms of, without saying too much, just how our emotions or how our natural, emotional instincts actually do tie back to kind of an evolutionary standpoint. I thought that was pretty clever, and it gave me kind of a consistent thread throughout the movie.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I guess like the takeaway part for themes is pretty strong for me, and I just didn't think the takeaway was good in this movie. There is a pretty consistent theme, you're right, and even execution of it is pretty well done. I mean, I give it an average score, so that's where I'm coming from.
Sure, yeah.
I had a hard time really finding one overwhelming theme, if at all. I mean, there's some little things personally. Yeah, things that we can probably hit in the discussions, but that's kind of that's why I gave it an average score, because I'm sure they're there, but it just wasn't apparent enough for me to be like, this is what I learned from this movie.
But it didn't feel so empty to you like I would give Project Power a 15.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Again, that's why, average score.
All right.
Should we move on to aesthetics?
Let's do it. I gave this 100.
Interesting. I'm at the 85.
I'm at 100.
100.
Yep.
So I want to hear from you guys, because
when you give 100,
I know
you got to back it up, right?
Well, yeah, and especially given the other movies that we've done and the fact that those have not received so high of a praise from you. So why is this 100 is the best? This is the best in film for you. Yeah, you guys agree with that?
This is world class. I think that's where I come from, and it's not to say that there aren't other ways of achieving 100, but in the science fiction realm, what he does with the science on screen is just phenomenal. And I really want to talk about this in great length at some point, but I'll just start out by saying that for this movie, Christopher Nolan wanted to make sure that he stayed true to the scientific principles that he was displaying on screen. So he got a guy named Kip Thorne, very famous in the realm of, astrophysics, let's say, right? And he was brought on as a consultant to make sure that things were as close to the accepted theory as possible, and that he knew where that line was. They actually ended up doing simulations of what a black hole would look like and how it would function. That had never been done in the scientific field before. They did it as simulations in order to figure out how they were going to display things in this movie. Those findings have since been backed up by actual findings in the scientific field. I think that's phenomenal. That like there was papers that came out of the stuff that Kip Thorne did for Interstellar. And so that should just tell you generally how closely they were paying attention to that. I think some of the shots that were a result of that, especially when they were out in space, were just so beautiful. And I mean, I'll stop there because I could gush about it. But obviously Hans Zimmer was no, he didn't slump here either. I think he was really crucial in maintaining like the tone and feel of this movie as well. And the music kind of hit on all cylinders for me throughout.
Yeah, so like I watched this in IMAX for the first time when it came out in 2014, and it's one of those movies where like the visual effects, the visual aspect of it like sticks with me. Like I still remember how impressed I was then. Obviously this time around I was watching it at home on a TV and I still loved it. Obviously it's not the same experience. This is a movie where the theater experience just increases the immersion effect by like 5 magnitude. I don't know. It's well worth it to watch it in theater if any theater out there is going to replay this movie again.
Right.
But I just remember being so impressed with it, and it is very consistent both with the music and the visuals. So it's just very pleasant to watch. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I can't like think of a movie that could be beyond this in this genre.
And this did win, and I mean, so we do have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, I know we were talking about the scores and sometimes they don't match up. I mean, this won Best Achievement in Visual Effects. It won an Oscar for that. So, I mean, I don't disagree with you guys on anything. I mean, 85 is a good score.
It could just be
I don't think that
personal
this
preference.
Yeah, it's a personal preference thing. I mean, I think where you guys are rating this very highly, it shows what you look for in a film. I look more for, I guess, just interesting, like, stuff that's more challenging to do camera-wise, right? That's why movies like Birdman are, like, so high on my list, or things like that, you know, aesthetically. So I think it's just a difference in how we kind of view that category. Great by any standards, definitely the top reason that, from what I'm reading from you guys, that you should watch this movie. In my opinion, that is the top reason why. What do you guys think?
I think that's right? I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Faraz, but I think that's everyone's highest score, right, is coming in the aesthetics category.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yep. I mean, that tells you right there. And yeah, to your point, there are different things that you can factor into. Aesthetics is kind of a broad category, right? There's a lot of different things that you can highlight in there. And I think he's done some things really well. But yeah, even you, Farhan, are saying that by all standards, this is nearly a must watch, right? For that particular aspect. So I think that tells you right there. Even, despite different preferences, like there's a lot to be appreciated in this movie on this front. So I think that's a fair assessment. Faraz, you mentioned this, but man, if you miss this one in theaters, there's almost no way to get that back, and that is a real shame. And Christopher Nolan is very, very strong on that, right? Like he believes in like the pristine theater experience to a degree. He's obviously a bit of a theater nerd in that sense. So he relies on that and he uses it to maximize the theater experience, and obviously he hits those notes in this film for sure. If you get a chance, often when his movies are coming out, the few IMAX theaters like that are at the science museums and things like that, those IMAX theaters will replay most of his filmography leading up to his next big release. So that's one place I know that if you missed it, you can kind of keep an eye out and try to catch it one time in the near future. But really, that's kind of the one place where you can get the full experience again.
The IMAX at Navy Pier would do that? I don't know if they did that.
Yeah, the IMAX at Navy Pier might do that. The IMAX at like a museum, the Museum of Science and Industry, or any sort of science museum would do that, and they have done that in the past. So that's like really the only place where I've seen where you can really catch that, because any other theater that does kind of older films, it's not going to be an IMAX theater, right? So
the Music Box Theater does a lot of old movies, but that's not the best place to watch this.
Exactly. So very tough to get that experience back. But if you're set on it, keep an eye out. There is a shot.
Or just have a really rich friend who just has a huge theater in their basement.
Are you offering to be our rich friend? Because
and No, I'm not that. But the other option is just to just watch this on your phone.
Hey.
Got him.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we close off this
If
section.
anybody-
We'll
if
see you
anybody-
guys in the discussion.
If
Yeah,
anybody
we'll be
watches
back.
this movie on their phones, I'm coming after you.
Yeah, don't watch this on your phone, please. All right, we'll be back next week with our discussion, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. Want to see what your tally is? Check out thetwiceover.com. All the movies we've done are listed there, as well as what we're watching for the current week. Follow us at The Twice Over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you can leave us any suggestions, feedback, or comments. And if you're about it, you can also support us on Patreon. The music you hear on this podcast is from Amerigo Gazaway. You can find his work on Bandcamp and Spotify.